is the future of cryptocurrency trading? Facilitating our discussion is Howard Greenberg. Now, he is president of the American Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Association. Hello, Howard. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So, our second theme here on this panel, theme number 2, Bitcoin, the dominant coin. Tell us what you guys talked about on this panel.
Sure. We talked about a few things. We really got into what is the impact that Bitcoin is having in the cryptocurrency area. We also talked about where we feel it is in the life cycle throughout the cryptocurrency. And then lastly, what other obstacles are there for mass adoption right now that we're seeing?
So tell us about the panelists that had this thought leadership.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have a lot of real practitioners in both the cryptocurrency and blockchain area. We have CFOs, CEOs from around the world that are chiming in every day on different aspects of cryptocurrency and blockchain, and a really, really diverse panel. It's really been a great asset.
Now, in your executive summary, it looks like Bitcoin is the gold standard still for cryptocurrency. Tell us about this.
Sure. As many people know, while there's still 1,600 other coins out there, Bitcoin is responsible for over 51% of the daily value exchanged in cryptocurrencies right now. So we really wanted to talk about where that was and the life cycle and what we see it happening to it over the next few years.
And as we get into key point number 1, tell us about these issues to widen the adoption of the currency.
Sure. One of the first ones we saw was Vikram brought up about taxes, where they're getting collected. One of the biggest problems to adoption, especially, is regulations, especially here in the U.S. And right now it's really confusing on where taxes get paid, how they get paid. So that really scares people off from using it right now.
And then Daryl, what was his point?
Daryl did a great job of talking about how as Bitcoin becomes more economically important, especially with the advent of Bitcoin futures, how someone could really make a lot of money just by shorting it on the market through the ETFs and then attacking it by buying it on the long term on the actual exchange level. I don't see this as being too big of an error because, quite honestly, ETFs aren't approved yet and they're still far down the road. And once you get into the ETFs, it means you brought in the SEC or the CFTC to come start adding regulation to the market, which would be very good.
So what he's talking about, though, is, I guess, some of the concerns, right, that they might try and short it?
Absolutely. He was concerned that ETFs would provide another spot because when you have an ETF, you don't actually have to buy a Bitcoin, which is a fixed amount commodity. You can actually just sort of gamble on whether you think it's going to go up or down.
Right.
You don't have to physically own the asset anymore.
All right, well, let's move into key point number 2, the life cycle of Bitcoin, which is, who knows? That's a big question, right?
Absolutely. Bitcoin's been around since 2009. If you talk to some people, they feel that that's a long time, but quite honestly, adoption really didn't start till 2016. So most of us on the panel, in fact, almost everybody, agreed that we are very early in the life cycle of Bitcoin. We are very much on still the early adopter level, and we have a long way to go when it comes to adoption.
And you said that was pretty much everybody's the belief system is that we're still early in, even with Bitcoin?
Yeah, that was one of the few things that everybody on the panel agreed at, that we're still very early in the life cycle of it, and that there's still a lot of morphing, as you can see in the second point there by James Barry. There's still these technologies are still morphing as we go, and we're in generation 1, and we really won't hit life cycle maturation till we're probably in version 3.
And how much do you think the general consuming public understands about Bitcoin?
Not much, actually. If you talk to people, there is a lot of confusion on what Bitcoin versus blockchain means, and they really think that it's this huge computer program. It's only 147 megabytes right now of data, so it's actually a small one. It's just that it's being run on thousands and thousands of computers that are taking up that energy we all hear about.
Yeah. So moving into key point number 3, the impact of Bitcoin. I guess this is the impact that it's had so far versus the impact you think it's going to have in the long run?
It's a little bit of both. It was actually on, where do we feel the impact of Bitcoin is versus all cryptocurrencies, or how it impacts all of the cryptocurrencies. What we've seen is as Bitcoin goes, so do all the others. There has not really been a lot of, as you would use in the traditional stock markets or financial assets, a lot of, TA that actually works, because program or coin could be very early in its adoption phase or very early in its test net, and it could get a huge jump just because as Bitcoin grows, people get into a fear of missing out, and they buy coins just in general without any backing or any knowledge of what the technology is actually there to do.
And the second point here on key point 3, walk us through this.
Sure. What's really happened is what you really see is there isn't much day-to-day, the way that Bitcoin was intended by Satoshi, who was the gentleman or group of people that actually wrote the white paper about this, was intended to be an actual currency that would get used across borders to help unbanked throughout the world transact without having to pay the bank middlemen to do such. And what we've found as it's gotten more and more expensive, and even more so as the expense of using it has gone up, and that's twofold. It's at the transactional level, where just to transfer from one person to the other, the fees went up, exponentially during the rush in December. And the second problem with costs involved is the tax ramifications, especially here in the U.S., where it's treated as a property and you need to file either a capital gains or a capital loss on every transaction you made. So as you can imagine, buying a cup of coffee and then having to go pay taxes on it every single time you bought a cup of coffee would stop from most people using it. So what's really happening is we're seeing it being used as a digital asset. It's being stored just like gold, and we're seeing a top-heavy effect to that with the largest wallets. So holders of the coins have in the millions and billions, and we're not seeing the mass adoption yet.
So, Howard, do you think that the receptiveness of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, are you seeing it gaining credibility with people? Trust, yes, I guess, trust and credibility?
Yeah, you definitely are seeing more and more, especially outside of the U.S., where it is, you do see more day-to-day transactions occur. What has also happened is with Bitcoin is, again, as this ETF talk has come about, it's brought in more regulators to the scene. It's brought more eyes to it. And with that scrutiny becomes, a little bit more traditional trust in the mechanisms involved.
Well, as you pointed out at the beginning, you had a really great panel of experts. Tell us about the 3 that really stood out for you on this.
Sure. One person was really heads and shoulders above, James Barry. James is actively working in the space. He is actually, I believe, starting a token or coin that will be involved around securing the Internet of Things. So like your cell phone, your Ring, you have a Ring connected to the Internet, your, your doorbell, or your Nest if you have a
thermostat.
A thermostat that's connected to the Internet. And he really had some great points throughout the panel and really added a lot of interesting ideas on the subject.
That's great. Well, a really great job talking us through this, Howard. This is obviously we are really on an exciting frontier here. Tell us what's coming in the next theme.
Sure. Next, we're going to look at the rest of the top 50 coins and sort of break them down into categories, looking at those categories to see what is overpopulated, what's underpopulated, where we think the future of cryptocurrency in general is transforming towards, and what those type of coins are going to look like in the future.
Well, I can't wait for our next conversation, Howard. Thanks for taking us through these slides.
You're welcome.
Howard Greenberg, he is president of the American Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Association, and we look forward to our next conversation.